The dream. What's the dream? The dream is that we would, as a people, support education and put dollars behind education and educators to provide equitable, accurate education for our kids and culturally relevant education for our kids. We would address education in a way that's not us versus them, that we would understand that we're all pushing in the same direction and that we need to work together to get there faster because our kids are falling through the cracks, especially from kids that come from communities of color. There is no space anymore for I didn't know, or we can't change this. Everything can be adapted. Everything can be changed if we try. If there's one thing that I would wish for Oklahoma students in the educational system is wellness, that we do not prioritize wellness in our children, especially mental wellness. What I would love for our students is for them to feel safe and embraced and excited about what they're learning. And when you engage them in a way that connects with what they feel, what they're struggling with, what they love, it's this magical opening to really do the work. And we have to stop focusing so much on tests and these very colonized systems of what success is, and focus on health. That health should be a priority. And if we have happy kids, we are by and large going to have kids who are going to be more apt to be able to accept that knowledge and learn those things that they need to be well-rounded adults. So wellness is like my priority. We have to give them the tools they need to save themselves. There's a lot that needs to change. The institutionalized racism is hard. That is a mindset. That is something that's also structural, right? So what is the answer there? Do you burn the system down, or do you come within the system to try to dismantle it and build it back up? So there are these two different modes of thoughts about how we do it. And I think so many of us were like, burn it down. It's not working for us. We're slipping through the cracks. They're not prioritizing the change. We have to build our own thing. We have to do something like with the land runs, right? Like they wouldn't change it until we gave them something to put in its place. Well, the educational system didn't work. And that breaks my heart because I have always been a huge proponent of public education. I have always worked so hard within our schools or in education programs or whatever to try to bolster, walk alongside, be a support. And after so long, I had to say, I cannot support a system that isn't willing to provide equitable education to my kids. And it was so hard to go, okay, we're going to go to a charter school, because it went against everything that I think, it just goes against everything that I was about. But I also wasn't willing to sacrifice my kids to that either. And so it's tough, but at the same time, Sovereign tried to be a part of Oklahoma City Public Schools, and they turned us down, so you can only offer your hand out so many times and say let's partner, let's do this. This is doable stuff. And at some point, when they're punching, you got to duck. And so we just decided to do it, if they're not going to partner with us and be a really great partnership, then we're just going to have to do it on our own. But that's nothing that we aren't used to. I think grassroots work and movement has been that way for a long time. And we serve our communities and fill the gaps where the institutions don't. And quite honestly, we're never meant to. These systems were not meant to serve our communities of color. They were here to educate white men. And that, while we have gained some, there has been some change, there has not been enough change, because the roots of that white supremacy still permeate formal education, both K through 12 and higher ed especially. So at some point you just have to fill the needs to serve your community. Sovereign Community School was a vision of Phil Gover, and it was based a lot around the idea of NACA, the Native American Community Academy in Albuquerque, which is it's actually a network of schools, different schools that really focus on indigenous wellness, or they indigenize curriculum in some way. And so we went out and we visited NACA, and it was the most magical place that I've ever seen. They had indigenous students. When I walked up, they were drumming outside the school and singing their songs. They were shooting hoops. They were harvesting plant medicine. They had a feast day planned. And it was just, I had never been in a space when I saw indigeneity embraced like that. It was something that you want for all of your students, no matter what group they're from. They should have the pride to be who they are, and they should have an educational system that wraps their hands around that and just says, yes, be who you are. Everything about your culture is, and your ancestors survived genocide to make sure that you have these things, use them. And it was just something that I thought, we have to have this in Oklahoma. And Phil, I'm so grateful that he had this dream to bring that to Oklahoma. And we started a very community-led effort around Sovereign. NACA is very New Mexican, very, very specific to their state. Oklahoma is very different than any other state in the United States because we had so many tribes that were forcibly removed here. And then we had the land runs, and the Trail of Tears ended here. So we're very different in that way, because we have, most places have a few tribes. We have 39 plus, so trying to find curriculum or building curriculum that doesn't exist, right? First of all, this is ground up kind of stuff, was challenging. And so we brought together this just incredible group of indigenous teachers and leaders who volunteered their time and efforts to be able to create this thing that was centered around wellness. It was centered around intertribal inclusivity. It was centered around building leaders. So it's incredible. We're in our second year. I hope we last forever. We've had a lot of struggles. We really need funding because Oklahoma is absolutely not a fan of charter schools. They are not a fan. In every turn, every legislative session, we see more people trying to bar the way for us to be able to educate our kids the way they need to be educated. And we want to make sure that they're well and they make it to graduation, but more than that they are comfortable being and proud of being who they are, and that they see a future for themselves. So many of our charter schools started because there was a lack of something, a deficit that we wanted to fill. But I think so many of us also are hoping to help to create something that is able to be duplicated in public schools. We want to be able to share what we've created and learned back into public schools, because it is knowledge that's needed. They were created out of necessity. So often we say, well, we've heard, well, that's segregated. Well, it's necessary right now for us to be able to serve our students, to make sure that they value their lives and that they have access to education. Until our schools do a better job, this is what we have to do. Ultimately, we want to be able to share this wellness program with the public schools because it can be implemented in other spaces. This isn't about protecting just our community. This is about building a model that can be shared with and implemented in many other spaces. It may not look exactly like what we've built at Sovereign because that's specifically indigenous, but there are basics to that knowledge that can be shared and taught. And so I think that that is an important piece for us to break down that us versus them. We are all in this to provide education and the very best for our kids because we all love our kids. We want them to succeed. We just have different ways about going about it to fill those deficits that aren't currently being addressed. For me, the mentality around our education has got to change so that we can serve all of our kids.